what happens? Well, nothing. Because there is then the opportunity for Ada to make good on the promises that you heard about public process and outreach. There's still $50,000 there, as far as I know, that hasn't been spent. When I was on the assembly, I originally approved the concept going forward to take a look at it. And I'm kind of astonished to learn that not much has happened. I think that the Fish and Wildlife Commission decided to give you the resolution because they had specifically requested monthly updates on what was happening, because they are responsible for trying to restore the fishing runs that have been decimated, and they've been doing a pretty good job, and it's all been based on scientific evidence that they have helped pay for and raise funds for. And so they've got a good, clear responsibility. So anyway, I would say ask for the public outreach that we've heard a lot of people say, and then take it up at a future meeting. The other public process that I noticed tonight, if you would please take a look at Code Chapter 448.1010. That is the big board, what they call it, the Local Road Service Advisory Board. And one of their many duties is to review stuff, exactly like the proposed time and materials contract that came up before. There are other sources I would have expected to see. I would have expected to see the local RSA weigh in on it. I would have expected the community council in the area to weigh in on it, and perhaps even the Transportation Advisory Board. So again, you've got time to figure that out, and hopefully you'll listen to that advice, because when I was on the assembly, I learned a lot by listening to the advisory boards. So I won't take up any more of your time, but I hope you'll consider that. You don't have to make a decision tonight. Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Bryce Dean. I own Snowcat Services of Alaska, and I'm for the Webster, Alaska, the road over there. I've been making the winter trails for a couple of years now out towards Whiskey Bravo, and I'm seeing all the people that are using the trails that I'm grooming and making smooth to provide them with more access. There's thousands of people on the trail, and it shows me that they want more access. And on your seal up there, it shows mining, so I think it's important to give these guys a shot. I've met several people that know that these studies have started since 2014, and if they paid attention and looked it up, they'd find the studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the assembly tonight?
Good evening, you guys hanging in there?
Yeah.
My name's Lee McKnight. I own property and run a business in Wasilla. And also on the Susitna River drainage. I'm opposed to the road. They're trying to sell it as recreational access. In my opinion, the people already have that. Boats, planes, snow machines. There's all kinds of ways to get there. So selling it as access to us, I don't buy that. The hunting and fishing resources, they claim access to that. Well, if they put this road in there, they will be ruined, in my opinion. They're already struggling. They're also claiming land sales. Well, I see auctions every year for land in the area already. So they already sell it. I have concerns, sitting over here talking about Jim Creek and Jonesville. Well, you shut those down. They'll just follow this new road out there where that's not yet, where those programs aren't yet put in place. Is one of my concerns. And as far as expansion, there's plenty of land to the north where there's a highway that's undeveloped. There's It goes forever. As the gentleman before me mentioned, they already put in a road every winter. You know, I've been on it. They can move anything they want up and down that cat trail there. Also, the Beluga power plant and gas fields have been functioning for what, 60 to 70 years without a road. So I'm not sure why the mine can't do the same. And clearly the residents are not in favor of this. I can tell that just from sitting there listening. And for those reasons, I can't get behind spending the money on it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the assembly?
Hi, my name is Jesse Schaefer. I've been recreating in the West-Susitna area my whole life, and I'm currently, along with my wife, a landowner in the area and utilize it as such nearly every seasonably allowed weekend during the year by boat, snow machine, occasional airplane ride, see people on flat tire bikes. I feel like access is not an issue. I, along with my family and friends, can attest to that. I am not opposed to economic development by any means, but I do feel that a project such as this should be presented properly to the public with facts about the economic impacts, both in regards to the state and borough's investments in this, but also the negative effects on the existing infrastructure, including tourism through lodges and just the overall community that has been there and recreating in this area for years. This project has been moved forward half-cocked with no information or consideration of the benefits or impacts for the community or the Alaskans that use it, and I hope that you turn it down. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to? All right. Anyone else here in the audience that would like to address the assembly?
My name's Hans Eng. I've been going up to the Yetna-Squentna area the past 10 years. There's a huge community up there. I don't know who on the board here has actually been up there, but if they're looking at for development towards that direction, it seems like it'd be a waste of time. Like everyone's been saying, head up the highway, there's plenty of area for development. The whole area towards Squentna, most of it is swamp. If you fly over on a plane, there's swamps that are just acres and acres long. And most of the property that's, building, if you can actually build a structure on there, there's cabins there. And there's real tight niche community up there. And the biggest thing I see with this issue is the lack of communication with the community up there. Like most of these guys have said on the phone in this office here, that no one has any acknowledgement of this project itself. And another thing with this road getting put in, I've worked at Red Dog Mine, I've worked at Pogo Mine, and there's issues. There's, if that's your hunting or fishing area, you're not allowed to hunt and fish in that area if it's a privately owned road. And there's just red flags across the board with this. There needs way more planning if this is even going to be considered a project moving forward in the future. But I oppose to the road as of right now. There needs to be a lot more planning and communication with the community, especially upriver, not just the ones that are in here making money off of projects. Thank you.
So one last call for anyone here present. Okay, Caleb, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jamie Sadler. My husband and I have property on Alexander Creek. And I just want to state that we are extremely opposed to the West Susitna Road. Permanent infrastructure like the roads and bridges cause irreparable damage to both the environment and the wildlife. The potential cost to both stakeholders and the environment far outweighs any financial benefits. I'm not opposed to mining, but when oil companies access the North Slope properties, the area must be left in the same condition or better than it was when they got there. And that will not be the case for these mines or tree developments or whatever it is that they're going to do with this road. What makes the land on the North Slope any better than our Matsu Valley? There is access for those of us that are willing to make the effort to use it. So for those reasons, I adamantly requested to oppose this. Thank you.
Okay. Caleb?
Good evening. My name is Kari Noor, Karinore, and I'm the project manager for the Resource Development Council for Alaska, commonly referred to as RDC, and I'm here to testify in support of the West Susitna Access Project. RDC is an Alaskan trade association with members in fishing, forestry, mining, and oil and gas, and tourism, as well as the 12 regional native corporations, labor, individuals, and others supporting responsible development of Alaska's natural resources. It is a policy of RDC to advocate for increased access to and across public lands for resource and community development, as well as for multiple use of public lands. With less than 1% of Alaska in conventional private ownership, access should be available on other lands. It is also a policy of RDC to support transportation projects that enhance resource and community development activities, as well as support efforts that stimulate investment in transportation infrastructure by catalyzing private partnership investment through public-private partnership models. Alaska, being a relatively young state, lacks infrastructure, particularly in rural and coastal areas. Further, at a time when Alaska needs to grow and diversify its economy, investing in infrastructure development concepts would create jobs and economic value for our entire state. While a resource development project in the West Susitna region tied to this project has not been formally proposed, RDC urges stakeholders to allow this and any potential project to go through the vetting process. Denying full review of this opportunity would pose significant ramifications for community infrastructure projects and responsible resource development in Alaska. Lastly, I would be remiss not to point out the potential benefits that could come with this project, such as jobs, including training and lifelong skills, economic diversification, and other opportunities. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this project tonight, and thank you for continuing to stay late.
Thank you. Caleb, we have one more person. Go
Hey,
ahead.
good evening.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. My name's Ben Seeley. I'm a big game guide at Rainy Pass Lodge and a novice and aspiring commercial pilot. First off, I know there are people on both sides of this. Obviously, that's why we're where we are. Some stand to gain quite a bit, and some stand to lose quite a bit if this goes through. I do think the more people would oppose this if they were aware of this. I just know from talking to a lot of friends and people that we associate with in the hunting, guiding community, flying, and just the public in general, it definitely did not get the attention I think it deserved. So having kind of told you where I come from, I've also tried to look at this stuff and approach it from a bit of a broader view. So personal affiliation and interest aside, I feel the relatively short-term gains of this road are absolutely not worth the lasting effects. I think the desired long-term gains that others have talked about and cited and wanted to visualize are not realistic. As a new father, I can't help but think of the Alaska my son will inherit. And this road and others like it are signs to me of a larger issue here that is priority with regard to resource management and how we see things. It's not lost on me that there are resources in the state and access to them can create revenue. But I think we all need to understand here kind of the larger picture, and that is once this land is opened up, it cannot be undone. This country will never be the same. The first road will, sooner or later, lead to more and more, and it just literally goes on. I think even though it might be difficult to quantify or justify it currently compared to monetary gain, I believe we need to protect what we have left in Alaska that makes it Alaska as we know it. So thank you for your time.
Caleb?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening to the mayor and the assembly members. Due to late hour tonight, I'll keep my comments brief. My name is Derek Musto. I recently purchased property in the Alexander Creek area with my family, and we were unaware of this project, and we did not know that it would put a private mining road, a road, mind you, that I'll probably not have access to, not far from the remote river property I've wanted all my life to purchase. Looking at the maps and the information available, the proposed routes run right through the area that I and many others I know live, recreate, and hunt. I've bear baited in the area, moose hunted in the area for years, fishing, camping, snowmobiling. This area is very well used and traveled by the public. Regularly, I spend time out there and see boats, airplanes, even kayaks on the waterways, jet boats, airboats, you name it. Thousands of people own remote property in the area and pay taxes without the borough providing them any services in return. Buying property out there, I knew the ROI would probably be non-existent as far as the tax services would be concerned, but I wanted remote property around people with like minds. Some of them have spoken tonight. If I wanted property along the road system, I would have purchased it elsewhere. I don't believe that the assembly has enough information at this time to support moving forward. If I was an elected official, I couldn't vote in favor of something that I knew people did not know about beforehand, especially those like myself that recently purchased property and had no idea about it. The majority of testimony tonight has been in opposition of this, with very articulate arguments of every type of perspective that I really hope you will consider. While I'm only a single voice, no one I know that owns property or recreates in the area year-round is supportive of this project. I find myself in foreign territory as I normally support resource development. That said, I can't support this resolution or this project. The area is largely wetlands, the timber is full of beetle kill, and the king salmon runs are on life support close to the public, but slowly starting to come back. There is very little harvestable timber for commercial purposes. I spent a lot of time out there over the years. In my opinion, materials could be exported through ice roads without adverse reaction, just like we have in other areas of the state and just like they're currently doing. Please do not support this resolution. I'm opposed to it, and I hope you will be too. Thank you.
Okay. Is that all we have, Caleb? Okay, so with that, one last call for anyone in the audience. Okay, with that, I will close audience participation. And we are on to the consent agenda. Does the assembly have anything else to pull? We've already pulled one item this evening. And so, Madam Clerk, would you read into the record those items that are still on the consent agenda?
Resolution 21-131, a resolution of the Assembly authorizing the Borough Manager to enter into an agreement with Webster Wood Services LLC for the Church Road timber salvage sale. AM 21-124, destruction of the ballots from the November 2nd, 2021 regular borough election. AM 21-125, approval of contract amendment to contract number 21-160B with Kenny Engineering LLC to extend the contract completion date to December 21st, 2022, and add an additional $1,082,872.44 to the contract amount and transitioning the project funding from road service area 17 to voter-approved 2021 transportation projects.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Unfinished business, Madam Clerk, we have an ordinance that's under unfinished business.
Ordinance 2140, an ordinance amending MSB 2.08060A, compensation for the mayor.
Okay, the main motion is on the floor. Madam Clerk, we have a piece of legislation that was on. Okay. So, Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to postpone consideration of this ordinance until January 4th.
Okay, is there objection? Hearing no objection, then it's postponed until January 4th.
Resolution 21-134, a resolution in support of the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority's effort to advance Phase 3 of the West Susitna Access Project feasibility study towards an application to governing regulatory agency.
Okay, the main motion is on the floor. We have a staff report, sir. Okay,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a short update tonight. Short's relative. Since the previous meetings, we've spent numerous hours discussing and considering different approaches to address some of the concerns raised by this project. So I want to clarify what is requested of the Mat-Su Borough in the resolution is support for continuing West Susitna Phase 3 project development. In other words, it's work leading to a 404 permit application with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. ADA has requested a letter of support from the manager. Based on previous phases and resolutions passed by the Assembly, I decided we would prepare a resolution to ensure clear support from the Assembly. With the recent election, 3 new members, including the mayor, have been sworn in, and this was an opportunity to ensure the entire body had an understanding of the project. To be clear, we're not asking the Assembly to approve a road. There is no MOU, as has been testified to tonight. There is no memorandum of understanding or agreement that we're talking about the borough entering into with ADA, as was done with previous phases. Now, part of the main reason for that is since Phase 2 activities, the state legislature appropriated $8.5 million to advance permitting activities. So the state came in and provided $8.5 million to do that outside of the partnerships that were needed before to fund Phase 1 and Phase 2 activities. Public access points for the road will be discussed and determined as Phase 3 work is completed and prior to the 404 permit application to the Army Corps. That is part of the work and vision for this phase as the permit application is prepared. A 404 permit application triggers the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, a federally governed process. This process includes a review of the extent of the environmental impacts and provides for a process that documents the effects and provides for public involvement prior to a record of decision. Depending on the extent of the impacts, an environmental impact statement, or an EIS, may be required, which includes a lengthy and detailed review of the project and provides for multiple opportunities for public involvement. Now, I'm just giving you kind of some insights into the NEPA process. There was a handout provided to the Assembly. There's 2 pages. One is a flow chart of the NEPA process, and then the permitting process information that were provided to the Assembly. I'm doing a summary of that without going into all of that detail. So the following criteria are considered in evaluating all applications: the relevant extent of public and private need for the proposed work, where unresolved conflicts of resource use exist, the practicability of using reasonable alternative locations and methods to accomplish the objective of the proposed work, and the extent and permanence of the beneficial and/or detrimental effects the proposed work is likely to have on public and private uses. No permit is granted if the proposed project is found to be contrary to the public interest. public involvement plays a central role in the Corps' administration of its regulatory program. The Corps conducts a public interest review, which requires the careful weighing of all public interest factors relevant to each particular permit application. Thus, one specific factor cannot by itself force a specific decision, but rather the decision represents the net effect of balancing all public interest factors. During a review of a permit application, the Corps evaluates over 20 various public interest review factors, including economics, general environmental concerns, wetlands, historic properties, fish and wildlife values, land use, recreation, and the needs and welfare of the people, to name a few. The resolution before you tonight is to continue with Phase 3 activities and advance this to the 404 permit application. The request for the funding, and this is a clarification because this $50,000 has been brought up a couple of times tonight. The request for the funding the Assembly appropriated as part of the fiscal year 22 budget was intended to support Phase 3 stakeholder engagement. So I'm going to describe to you a couple of options to you that I think are available to the Assembly tonight with the resolution that's before you. And I'll start out with option one. Option one is simply no additional public engagement prior to the 404 application and continued support for advancing the project to a 404 permit application. If that's what the Assembly were to desire to do, you would pass the resolution as it's written. Another option that the Assembly could consider, and I'll describe this with a little bit of detail around this, is to conduct additional public engagement prior to the 404 application. And if that were the Assembly's desire, I would suggest they pass the resolution and direct the manager to conduct additional stakeholder engagement as I'm about to describe. That would look something like this. If the Assembly desired additional stakeholder engagement prior to the 404 permit application, I would propose the following: that borough staff engage with a public involvement and hire contract support utilizing the $50,000 appropriated by the Assembly earlier this year. Number two, establish an online project sign-up form allowing the public to join a project email list and provide for electronic notifications for project-related announcements and developments. 3, MSB would conduct 2 virtual public meetings to share information with the public and seek feedback. Number 4, develop an online open house that will remain open for the public to provide comments on the project until March 21st of 2022. A summary of the collected information would be provided to the Matsu Borough Assembly for consideration, likely in the April timeframe. A project fact sheet, FAQs, previous phase deliverables, and project maps will continue to be available via the ADA website. There won't be at this point any new information that's not already been published on the internet or on ADA's website. So I just want to be clear about that because I don't want to infer that all of a sudden all of this new field work or engineering data is going to be available over the next few months. And it is also likely that these same communication strategies would be utilized during the NEPA process. So that would be option number 2. And of course, the third option would be to postpone the resolution indefinitely, which would decline support for the project. Options 1 and 2, passing the resolution as written, or directing additional stakeholder engagement prior to the 404 permit application. That option envisions moving both ADA's work and the MSB stakeholder engagement forward simultaneously. That would be my update for you tonight. I'm prepared to take any questions.
Assemblyperson McKee?
I was with you until that last part where you said that they would move forward simultaneously. When you said would that mean that ADA moves ahead with the stage 3, while at the same time we have the public engagement extended through what you said, March?
Yes, so through the mayor to Assembly member McKee, that's correct. So the option as I described, that second option as I described it, when you pass the resolution, basically says, A, to go forward, you've got your resolution of support, and the direction to the manager would allow us to utilize funding the Assembly's already appropriated to then go out and develop some stakeholder engagement as I described it between now and the end of March of next year.
My confusion there is I thought we already had the $50,000 set aside for Ada to go ahead and do their thing.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee, the $50,000 was funding the assembly appropriated for the borough's use. Like, we have never had an agreement with Ada to provide that funding to
Oh.
them up to this point. And honestly, you know, and frankly, now that the state's appropriated $8.5 million, I don't know where $50,000 is going to make that
Make
any
a
better.
difference, yeah. All right, thanks.
Okay. All righty. Assemblyperson Yuan?
Through the mayor to
Oh,
the
we need to do the,
manager,
go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
I apologize. Okay, so I'd like to speak on option 2. And my understanding is, and you can clarify, but we have not started spending the 50,000 yet because we weren't for sure that this was going to move forward. And I applaud the manager for not wanting to waste money. So the engagement, I've heard a lot of people, and I totally understand where they're coming from. There's maybe not been enough engagement by Ada. I assure you, moving forward, if this passes, the Matsu Borough, led by Manager Brown, there will be a massive amount of engagement. I will help make sure that it's not that difficult. If we can collect taxes from people who live out there, we can send them postcards and questionnaires, right? So it's not rocket science. The reason that I pushed this off the last meeting and asked for it to be on here tonight was for more engagement. If you want to get engagement, put something on the meeting, put it on the agenda 2 meetings in a row and you'll get plenty. And we got lots of good feedback tonight. I'm in a weird position personally. I'm as pro-job as it gets. I just sent out an email here recently with 11 questions, really hard questions to answer, most of them, to Ada and to the manager that, and I stated right up front, I'm as pro-job as it gets. I'm a developer myself, but I'm equally pro-moose and pro-fish and pro-Alaskan lifestyle. And so I have a cabin out here. I have multiple relatives that have cabins out here. I have another one on the other side of the range. In an ideal world, I think we figure out a way to create jobs, create economic activity, but not change the landscape and the accessibility out there. For anybody, you know, Mr. McKnight spoke about this earlier. For anybody that wants to be out there, we're already there. And we've been there our whole life. We snow machine, we boat, we fly. I'm not a big fan of one of the guides, I'll leave his name, one of the guys that guides out here that I'm a close friend with called and he spoke against the project. But then he says, well, you know, if it happens and the road is there, maybe us landowners out there could access it. I would really caution you guys against that. If this road does get built someday, you don't want to access it, I promise you. Because if you can, what's going to stop everybody else from negotiating that, right? So I don't know. I've spoken enough. This is a tough situation to be in. Again, going back to the pro-jobs mentality and what it is that helps us all feed our families, I think that's something to support, protecting our moose and game populations and especially our fish. You know, most of my questions that I asked, and we don't have time for me to read them all into the record, I can't get them answered until the next phase goes forward of the study. So what I want to ask tonight, so that everybody in the crowd understands, and I would like to ask the attorney or the manager, whoever can answer me, is if this moves forward, if we do vote to approve this, to get the next batch of information from this study, will the Matsu Borough Assembly eventually be tasked with another vote that could approve or disapprove this project in its entirety? So if the results come back and we and our voters don't like what they see, could we stop the project at that time? My understanding is yes, but I want to get confirmation on the record.
Okay, before he answers that, can I recognize the deputy mayor to extend our time again, please?
Madam Mayor, I move to extend the meeting to 11:30.
Okay, is there an objection?
I'm sorry, I could not hear what was said there. It's kind of mushy down here.
I move to extend the meeting to 11:30.
Okay, is there objection to the motion? Okay, hearing none, then we are extended to 11:30. Okay, now go ahead, sir, if you want to answer
So
Assemblymember
that may be a better
Young's.
question this may be a better question directed at Ada to ask in terms of the project. I know very little about the project. I did review the phase 1 responses or the phase 1 and phase 2 agreement. So what's going on here now is that Ada is saying they're going to go forward with the Core 404 permit, which may require an EIS, right? And so if you get your Core 404 permit, then what you have is you have your route selected and the approval to fill wetlands and do whatever environmental remediation would then be called for by that. One thing I don't know about the project is how much borough land it's proposed to cross. Obviously, if it's proposing to cross borough-owned lands, nobody's going to do that without assembly approval. And that therein lies a hook.
That was the direction I was headed in. So, thank you for saying that. There's no way this road gets built without crossing borough lands. So I cannot see how legally we would not have another vote in the future. But I had a feeling what you were gonna say. I wanted everybody to hear that. Yeah, it's a tough situation. Like I said, my questions, I can't even get them answered without seeing the next phase of the study. I don't like the idea of the road being public. Those are all things we can determine later. That's little stuff, but in a perfect world, I think most people would agree that creating jobs and mining opportunities would be great, but not changing the landscape of the area or the uses or ruining it for everybody that's dedicated 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their family's life out there. One of my major concerns, and we'll talk about this later, is the detail in the reclamation bond. The reclamation bond requirements for mining and gravel pits and all that are very, 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 I swear that number has not been updated since like the 1950s. And we could talk about that in the future, but making sure that there's enough money available if the developer fails, that it can be reclaimed, that the reclamation can be done. But anyway, that stuff we'll have to talk about in the future. I think at this point, for me to get my questions answered, I'm going to have to see phase 3. I feel better knowing that we will have another vote in the future that we can either be in support or not for this project. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Hale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move to postpone this indefinitely and speak to it if I may.
Okay, his motion is to postpone indefinitely. Is there objection to that?
May I
go
speak to it?
Sure.
So basically, Ada doesn't need our permission to build this road. And, they came to us a year ago or a year and a half ago or whatever it was, made all these promises about the public engagement they were going to do, of which they did none. So I don't believe that they deserve our blessing. They can go ahead and do all of these things, apply for all of these permits without any help from us. And we've been here 2 weeks now, catching all of the anger and all of the hell that should have been raining down on their heads because they did not do the public engagement. We're sitting here doing their job, and I don't think they deserve our blessing. They don't need our permission, and they don't deserve our blessing.
Okay, just a minute. Deputy Mayor, did you, I have your initials down here. Did you just want to talk about the extension, or did you have something to say on this subject?
Well, I think now that the motion's been made, we can only discuss that. So I'd call the question on that.
Okay. Okay, so the question's been called.
The question's been called on stopping debate on the postpone indefinitely. If you want to stop debate, you'd vote yes. If you, on the motion to postpone indefinitely, if you do not want to stop debate, you would vote no.
Okay, so if everybody proceed to vote?
Is it,
Calling the question is not debatable.
okay, I have a question I'd like to ask, so I'll oppose that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody needs to vote. It's not debatable, so you have to, if you vote yes, that stops debate on the motion to postpone. If you vote no, then we can continue the debate on the motion to postpone.
So voting no is continues the debate on the motion to postpone. I think I got it, yeah.
Assemblymember Hale,
Yes.
it fails. It requires 2 votes or 5 votes, excuse me, and it has Assemblymember Sumner and Hale in support.
Okay, Assemblyperson
Mayor,
Myers?
if someone could clarify, my understanding was Ada needed, their rules require our approval to spend the 8.5 million they have. Can we clarify that?
Go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Nowers, I asked that question of Ada earlier today, and I'll read a quote in the return email. It said, "Ada is not able to advance the project at this time and expend the legislature-approved funds toward the permitting activities under an agreement without a letter of support for the project from the Matsu Borough."
Okay, Assemblyperson Yant?
To clarify what the manager's saying, it said statute 4488177, so they do need our approval. I think, yeah.
Okay, yes, Assemblyperson 2, go ahead.
I'd like to support this and then choose section 2 or route 2 that you talked about.
Okay. Are you saying you're supporting the motion to postpone?
No.
Okay,
To move forward with Ada.
okay, all right. Assemblyperson McKee?
I still have my mic on. I see that. Probably I better just turn it off. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I feel that, I just feel the need to clarify this for the record. And I understand that folks are not happy with the public stakeholder or the stakeholder engagement's been conducted. I want to say, I don't believe that's squarely on Ada, okay? The Matsu Borough had a role. If you go back to the Phase 2 MOU, it does state that the borough had a responsibility for conducting stakeholder engagement. So if there's blame, it should be shared. I'll leave it at that.
Yes. Assemblyperson Yant?
I'd like to speak on that again, and I don't want that blame to fall on the shoulders of the staff. We got into the next budget year. You got to get into the next budget season before you can even spend the money. I can see why we've not started because we didn't even know if this was going to come forward. I don't want to see the Matsu Borough waste 50 grand. I don't think anybody does. With that being said, it looks as though it may. And as Moki said earlier, if the project were to be supported, option 2 is the only option I would support. I would want to start public engagement effective tomorrow morning. You know, what that looks like, I'm not sure. I know if we can mail people bills for taxes, I think we can communicate pretty quickly. But anyway, I want to make sure that the blame doesn't fall on the staff. It takes time to do things. It can't happen overnight. And so if we move forward, then the engagement will begin immediately.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone?
Postpone indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
That's a big difference.
That's what I needed, yeah, indefinitely. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so if you vote yes on this, then you are postponing it indefinitely. If you vote no, then you can go ahead and have another motion to concerning the options that the borough manager has provided for you. Okay. All right.
Assemblymember McKee, did Do you want me to explain that one more
I
time?
really do.
The motion to postpone indefinitely would kill it, basically kill the legislation.
Oh,
So if you voted yes, you'd be voting in favor of postponing indefinitely. If you voted no, the main motion's still on the floor, more debate can happen.
thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Assemblymember Hale.
Yes.
It failed with Assemblymember Hale in support.
Okay. So now, what is the wishes of the assembly regarding the proposals that the borough manager had presented, as well as your decision on 21-130, I'm gonna take my glasses off, 34. Okay, Councilwoman Nowers?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I thought that Assemblymember Yunt brought up some really good ideas. I like the option number 2. I never viewed this as an up or down vote on this project. It was always to move forward to the next phase. I know there's public process in that next phase, but kind of like along the lines that we were talking before, where does the borough get a say? Like, a lot of this is state land, but it's in the borough. And I think some really good points have been raised about this, and we should be providing a venue for those things to be sorted out. And can we do this project in a way that we can have the mining and we preserve some of that economy that's based on the remoteness of the area? You know, can we have our cake and eat it too, or get as close as we can to that? And I think that that's worth bearing out. So I appreciate the effort to give people who haven't felt like they've had a voice to be able to air some of that, and we can work through some of those things, and you never get everything you want. And everybody wants to live at the end of the road and have that be the end of the road. So that's a challenge. But yeah, I'd like to see us go forward with that option 2 and see if we can work to make this a better deal while Ada goes forward with some of that analysis to give us more specifics.
Already, the clerk tells me we need to get a motion on the floor before we continue to discuss. So who would like to? Yes.
I'd like
Okay.
to make a motion to move forward with option number 2, with the understanding that we begin public engagement effective immediately.
Thank you. Is there discussion? Yes.
I'd just
go
like to say something kind of interesting. This afternoon, I was reading through all of these reports. I don't know what time the earthquake happened, but I can tell you that I was reading 3.1.3 tectonic and seismicity when the earthquake happened. And I knew this was going to be a big deal tonight. And I'm so pleased that you have given us option 2, because, you know, if I were one of the folks that lived out there and wanted that lifestyle, I'd be here fighting like a tiger. But I also know that life is a crapshoot. You could move out in the Mojave Desert, and next week the Las Vegas springs up. So, you know, it's a chance that you take. It's just part of life. But if I'd be like every one of you, I'd be out there fighting like a maniac to maintain it. But my position as a borough assembly member is that I have to see, okay, what's good for the borough as a whole. Ada hasn't proven to me. I looked at that map over there, and for those of you who don't know what that map means, that whole big green space, that's the Mat-Su borough. Those little tiny yellow spots, that would be borough-owned land. So I need to be convinced and that it is worth it to the borough to do what this is going to do to those folks out there, and then look at the other part of that, where the folks that stand to gain from it, whether they be residents or businesses or whatever, that's a good idea too. But I think the manager's approach to this says, okay, we're going to do 2 things at once. We're going to allow in public engagement, because 2 weeks ago, that's the reason we postponed this thing, so we could get public engagement, and I haven't seen anything happen since then. So if we go forward with both the public engagement and the approach to a third party, an outside party, NEPA and that sort of thing, to me, that feels safer and more objective. Just my 2 bits.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? Deputy Mayor?
So I don't know if this project's ever going to happen. I don't even know if it should happen, but I know that saying that people can't even study projects in the Matsu Borough is going to have a really chilling effect on economic development here and you know, our future. So I would advise against saying people can't even study things here in the Matsu Borough.
Further discussion on the motion? Okay, is there objection?
Point of clarification.
Okay, we have an objection, so,
No, well, not necessarily an objection, just a point of clarification. So,
okay.
what the motion is to go with option 2. Does this mean if we pass this motion, then the resolution itself passes and we move on?
I believe the approval of the resolution is included in option 2. So if you vote yes for option 2, you are approving the resolution and then also approving the project for the public stakeholders input. That's what he's saying.
Okay. I'd just like to say again that I don't think we should be doing Ada's job.
If I could, there's an amendment on the floor to go with option 2 that does not adopt the resolution.
Well, I thought his presentation
Thank you.
on option 2 said that it adopted. That was part of his presentation.
Yeah, I think he was just giving options 1, 2, and 3. So I would, this is basic, in my opinion, Madam Mayor, and excuse me, this motion right here is giving the manager direction. It does not adopt the resolution.
Okay. So what is,
So what happens to the resolution? If we tell the manager to move forward, which I think is a great idea, what happens to the,
well, let's ask the manager what his option 2 is.
yeah.
Then we will know what we're voting on.
So, Madam Mayor, the option 2 included 2 things, so that we can move both things forward simultaneously.